How's it going? Super quick video, how to level up IRL, in real life. Okay, so look, you have skill level here, and then you have maybe skill, or for programmers I call framework, up to you what you want to call it. But this is basically the name of what you want to level up. So in games it will be like, I don't know, strength, stamina, whatever the hell you want, right? Actually, you can honestly do it with physical exercise, but here we're going to be focusing on intellectual shit, right? So then you're going to have your probably link to docs, probably link to questions. This is what I have. And then you have revision. Well, you have difficulty. I usually have difficulty as well. Difficulty level is usually here. And then we have revision 1, and all the way to, normally 7 is like the sweet spot. Somewhere in here is the sweet spot, I noticed, right? So once you get to this level of revision, you are really reaching high level of mastery. So let's apply this stuff. So let's say, okay, let's say we want JavaScript. Well, let's take something smaller. Let's say Material UI. Material UI, okay? So difficulty is easy to medium. I also have in here number of questions, usually. Whoops. Questions, number, like this. Now this stuff is like completely optional, but you definitely want this too. Then let me just find the Material UI. 1 second. Okay, so let's do an example. Material UI autocomplete component. So Material UI autocomplete component is not very straightforward. MUI autocomplete. It's kind of it has a lot of things in it. So you need to know what do they do. You basically need to understand how it functions, because most of the components are very singular. You have like input, and then they have a state attached to it. But this one has an input and a drop down combined into one, and then you also have multiple ways to manipulate things, that like, how do you display what's in the drop down, how do you manipulate stuff like the search. Like it's not a straightforward component. Let's just say it. Let's just put it that way, right? So Material UI autocomplete API is probably better. Yeah, so you see, like in here there are so many switches, and you need to understand which ones are being used in your company. Do not overstudy this stuff, but only use stuff that is applicable to your company. Okay? So this is what it's going to look like. This is your documents. Here are your questions, basically. Well, questions are going to be in here. So there are 73 questions in this skill, I suppose. So this skill is going to be called autocomplete Material UI component. And then you break down things like, once you start learning it, you put in the questions like, what does that do, what does this do, what does this do, and then eventually you have this question answer document. So like, for example, what does free solo mean? Free solo means that a person can type into the component any phrase or any characters, and he's not limited to what's in the dropdown, because normally by default you try to type something, it only limits you to what's in the dropdown, but free solo allows them to do that, right? So stuff like that. So like, what does multiple do? Multiple allows them, if you have an array of options, it allows them to select multiple options as opposed to singular. So stuff like that. I already covered all of this. So you see, when you're doing revisions, you have your questions, and then you have your answers. You do not have to know it by heart. Just remember, you do not have to know it by heart. You just have to go through it every single time and be able to do what's in the questions. Like, for example, is it advised to use options and to use memo? I know that right now from the head, but you should, because then options are usually very, very large. Usually it's an API call. So it's a good idea to use memo in it. But do you know what I'm saying? It's like you just have this question-answer style. I found this to be the best way to learn, is through question-answer. And then that's how you do it. And then you basically do go through revisions. So you see, you're gonna have your questions. Well, number of questions is basically just count all of this, and that gives you 73 questions. You see, I already have it in here. So we can put it in here. 73, a link to document, that's gonna be this. Link to questions is gonna be this. I usually put this little thingy in here like this. Da 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 da. And then you start revising. So let's say we finished our revision today, we put it like this. And then I usually also have something like a green, means I kind of have, I remember almost everything about it. Then I have yellow, which is kind of vague, probably need more revision. And then red is like, oh my god, I'm like disgustingly bad at it. But that's, again, that's optional, that's up to you. But what you will see is that the more revisions you do, the better this skill level. So 10 is the max. And then you're probably going to start off with something. Once you finish the tutorial, you'll probably be something like 4. And then you start noticing that over time, as this increases, this increases. So think about it as a skill, I don't know. In games, you go do wood farming, right? And the more the wood farming you do, the skill rises. So in real life, it's the same shit, because the more revisions you do, the higher the skill becomes. Because you see, when you're doing revisions, you start running into bugs. Like, for example, I don't know, you work with a component, you put autocomplete into it, it's a TypeScript, now boom, you get an error in TypeScript. You are like, oh my god, I never came across that error before. And your skill rises. And then you start asking questions. Okay, what does like, well, like in here, what is that? I know it's an event, right? Do I really need it? Do you know what I'm saying? Like your mind is gonna start really going to this, trying to figure out granular things about this component, and then you become like super good. Do you know what I mean? Especially with bigger frameworks like Angular, React, TypeScript. You know, as you start with level of skill 3 or 4, as you start progressing into using it in your other projects, kind of like you're on daily basis when you're revising it, you will start noticing things that you want to know more about, and then that's how your skill is going to grow. But the key is revision. Revision is the key, assuming you're a curious person, you know, and assuming you're not an addict, you know, because if you're an addict, I don't know, I tried to do it when I was doing some League is just like League of Legends is not good, because you'll be rushing it, you know. You'll be like, come on, I don't care what this is, I don't give a shit, just let me finish so I can go back to winning games. Oh my god, so it's not good. Maybe it works for you, you can use gaming as well, but for me, I didn't like it. Like, I was just rushing everything, you know. But anyway, fundamentally what I'm saying is, number one, the best way to learn is question-answer style, like this. Question, answer. And then to grow the skill, you need to revise. And once you get to 6 to 8 revisions, you'll be very good. This will be like probably 8 to 9 level. I'm very careful about putting 10, because 10 is like super mastery. and you don't normally need that level of mastery. Like normally in job, I'm talking about like level of job, 8 is probably, like 7 to 8 is probably what you're targeting, because once you 7 to 8 level on the framework, the rest of the stuff you can kind of just read and be like, oh, okay, that's what it does. Like paper component, for example, in here, like I know it's part of Material UI. And although I don't know what it does in here specifically, if I need to know it, I have enough skill to figure out how it works. Does that make sense? So again, like, one of the problems in programming is going to be there's so much stuff to learn, you need to understand what to not learn. Because when I started learning programming, I was like, I'm going to just go here, and I'm just going to learn everything. Full stack, here I come. And over time you realize that there is not enough hours in your lifetime to do it. And all of that stuff completely changes. So by the time you finish learning latest C++ thing, your JavaScript is already changed. Do you understand? So you need to know what not to learn. And that will be governed by your project most of the time. So when you look at your project, you look at the code, then you look at how the components are used, and then it will tell you what properties you need to know and what you do not need to know. And it's a good idea to remember that almost all frameworks can do what you do not need to custom build almost anything in today's society. Well, in programming, because almost any type of requirement that your customer may have, the framework will cover it. Like 9 out of 10 times. So as opposed to trying to rebuild it yourself, find the framework solution to it. It's a lot easier, it's less buggy, easier to maintain. So just be aware of that. And that's about it. That's how you level up. And then obviously you have your, whatever. Let's do another skill. Redux toolkit query. This will be probably medium to hard. Number of questions in here probably going to be something like 40. Well, let me find it, one sec. So there's Redux toolkit. Let's look at query. So that's it here, right? So how many questions are in the query? Let's persister. Okay, so how many questions in here? $118. Okay. So again, there's going to be 118 questions. Now, don't get scared by 118 questions. Most of them are like super basic. Like, what does base query do? What's the syntax for this? And it's usually like 1 second answers. Do you know what I mean? I try to be very, very granular because you get high on completion. Do you know what I mean? So when you start getting these hits into your brain when you answering the questions, it motivates you to do stuff. So don't ask question like explain to me our Redux toolkit query. That is way too big. Tell me, okay, what is the starting syntax for? Well, let's just take a question from Redux toolkit. Let's just say, okay, what is the difference between lazy query and a standard query, right? So I know the answer to that straight up because standard query fires on the first render. Lazy query fires only when you call the fetch function, trigger function is called sometimes. Well, you can call it whatever the hell you want, but it's inside of the lazy query. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that like everything is just so broken down. So for example, lazy query, how do you destructure the array? How to fundamentally do it? What does the trigger function do? So trigger function triggers the query as opposed to standard query. Well, it's too much mumbo jumbo, but what is data object? That's the data API you get from the query, and last promise info was the... Honestly, I have no idea what this thing does. It's like, I never used it. I know it exists there. I think it's the information on the... I don't know what it does, honestly. I know it's some kind of an object with information in it, but honestly, we do not use it in our project. So it's like, I don't really give a shit if I know it or not. I just know that it exists. You know, in the future, if I need it, I'll study it more, but at the moment, I don't give a shit. So, for example, you see, like, when you get an API response, what do these magical things mean? When is loading true, or when is loading false? Like, what's the difference between current data and data? So, you see, like, data is... well, I'm not going to start explaining. Holy shit, man. Basically, data is... is the last response from the API. Current data is the current response. It's very confusing because you want to use data. So, for example, let's say we're querying something. Let's say, I don't know, we have Dimitri here, and then Dimitri changed to James. But when the API is querying, it will become undefined, right? So we have it like this, and then like this. So this is data. This is current data. So data will always display the last response from the current data. So think about it. On the first attempt, current data and data will be Dimitri. But when you re-trigger the function, the current data is going to become undefined. Then it will receive a response from the API, which is going to be, I don't know, let's say Jimmy. Okay. So then this will change to Jimmy. But because you want to display something in the UI, you cannot display undefined. So this is like a placeholder for data, temporarily data, until it's being fetched, if that makes sense. So that's the difference between data and current data, you know. Because if you don't know that, you'll be like, oh, they're exactly the same. No, they're not. But get good kids, of course, they're going to say, data and current data are the same thing, you're noob. Don't tell me that you're doing programming without... What did he say? Tell me that you have not done programming without telling me you have not done programming. So stupid shit, right? Because if you use current data in a table and you fetch for a split second, your table will disappear because it's undefined and you can't. And if it's TypeScript, it's just going to crash the UI completely because you're trying to extract properties of undefined and it's not allowed in programming. You're just going to get an error, basically. Anyway, so it's going to be here. You're going to have your links in here. So that's your docs, that's your questions. Questions, link. And again, you see you start revising. So you've done your revision. You're probably going to start with like... RTQ is kind of difficult. You're probably going to start with 3 understanding. You need a lot of revisions on it to become really, really good with it. And you see, as time passes, you just revise, and this will grow eventually to 8. And then you understand query really, really well. And over time, you will start adding your own questions as you start getting more granular and trying to understand more about the framework, you know. And that's about it. Now, I would advise to maybe wait a couple of days before you revise something. But if you don't have an option, just revise it one after another, honestly. If you don't have an option, just go ahead and do it. I did it in the beginning. Let me show you something, some crazy shit. One sec. Yeah, so you see, like, I had a lot of small exercises for, like, JavaScript, regular expression, debugging, data structures. So you see, you kind of, like, revise. You see, I was doing rerun 2 times in the same day. Yeah, so you see I did this one, and then this one. Then I did this one. Oh, I even did this one. So I did this one, this one. But you see what I'm saying? Is like the more you revise, the better you get with all of this stuff. These are all fundamentals and very, very basics of JavaScript. Like, you know, like primitives, objects, arrays, and stuff like that. You know, how to... Algorithms at some point is going to be there, right? And you see like this yellow is like I don't know it that well. Green is like I do. Red is like very bad. I should revise it more. I had like a card system where you just move Rusty, you see. If something is red, I would move it to Rusty, and then I would revise it 3 times until it's green, and then I put it back into B1. And then if I come across it again, it's usually green or yellow, and if it's red, I put it again into Rusty. Honestly, you can download software to do this for you, because there is software where you create cards, and it will rotate the cards for you in such a way where after you revised something, you click on the output, which is you know it well, you okay, or you bad. Kind of like green, red, and yellow. And it will queue it up for you, because it runs like a weekly cycles. I think it's basically medical professionals, that's what they do. I mean, because in medicine you have to know so much, it's just insane. It's like crazy. And you can't afford to forget it sometimes, because you have to remember, like, as a programmer, you can sit here, whatever, you can Google shit, but I mean, if the guy's like sitting there choking on his blood and you're a doctor and you're just like, oh my god, what am I supposed to do in here? Do you understand? You have to remember what to do. Man, doctors is very, very difficult. I suppose you can still Google in there, but I have no idea how to do it. But they use a card system like this, and I've seen on YouTube, I was doing research how to revise, and it works because there is science behind on getting something into long-term memory. There is entire science behind it. And the way to do that, obviously you need to revise it like 25 times, I think, and you have to do it within a certain period of time as well, which is 7 to 9 days, I believe. And over time, then you have to... Now, it gets very vague because every single person is different. For some people, they need to revise it once a month. Some people can do it once every 3 months. But I noticed that the better you get with fundamentals, like I'm talking about fundamentals of JavaScript and TypeScript, all the frameworks will start to look very similar to you. So you start to snowball. Because, for example, I did Angular, like the entire Angular JavaScript, like entire library, foundation of it, in like 4 days. Whereas just to learn JavaScript, just to learn React, which is by size is very, very similar, it took me in the beginning, I think, 9 months. So do you understand like how much faster you move? Because back then I was shit at JavaScript. React was like I had no idea what components were, no idea what re-rendering is, no idea of the event loops. So you see, I had to spend a lot of time learning all of this shit. But because you already know how it works, it's just syntax difference. Like Angular and React are very similar, only there is syntax difference. And that's why you can just like speed run almost everything once you become like super, super good. I'm talking about like your JavaScript is good, your TypeScript is good, your React is good, your HTML, CSS is good, your Sass is good. I'm talking about like frameworks like Sass is CSS. Style components, you understand all that stuff. Then like stuff like Material UI autocomplete component is, you understand that it's just 2 components just jammed together and they share properties, and that's it. It's not that difficult. So the bit, like, it snowballs. I'm just saying that it snowballs. Okay, so again, core is question answers and revisions. and then try to granularly break down everything into smaller questions, as opposed to having big questions, breaking down to smaller questions. Much easier, you get more motivated. And that's it, that's how you level up, and then you are level 90. What is that, World of Warcraft? Whoa, strongest character. Warrior probably is the strongest, right? Warrior and Ice Mage, maybe. Maybe Priest? Priest is also pretty good. Well, that was like, I've been playing World of Warcraft like 15 years ago, so how the hell do I know? And then you are the ultimate warrior of whatever the hell you want to do, you know? It doesn't have to be, it can be anything. Any profession, you know? Okay, take care, bye-bye.